To today's webinar. With us today we have Richard Price and Benjamin Jobbins from Dezrez, who are going to be talking to you about converting more and stressing less, pipeline control in the changing market. So if any of you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please do pop them in the question box and we will save a few minutes at the end to answer those. But without further ado, I'll pass over to Richard.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Over the next 30 minutes, Ben and I are going to look at what's actually happening out there in the market, and more importantly, what the best performing agents are doing differently. This is going to be a practical conversation between Ben and I, so you're listening into our conversation about pipeline control in a market that's changed over the last 18 months. We'll be bringing some insight from our conveyancing and software business, and we'll be sharing what our customers are telling us. So I'm joined by Ben, who's our resident market expert. He works directly with Dezrez agents day in, day out. So he's seeing firsthand how this is affecting businesses of all sizes. So how are you, Ben?
Very good, thank you, Rich. Yeah, very good. Thank you for the introduction. And likewise, welcome to everyone that's joined us. Bit of an introduction to myself. As Rich said, I work alongside Rich on the cold face, as it were, in the challenging market that we're in at the moment, alongside all of our agents. Bit of background about myself. So I've been an agent now for 24 years, starting all those 24 years ago in a sleepy market town in Somerset, working for an independent. Then spent most of my career in central London, working for a very large, well-known independent, and then on to a couple of big national corporate brands. Most importantly, over those years, working alongside quite a few different business models, some of those being the self-employed business models, which we know now make up a large part of the market. So certainly a lot of experience guiding agents through the challenging times and ups and downs of the market over the last 20 plus years.
Great, thanks, Ben. It's great to have you with us. Good stuff. So before we get going, here's how we've structured the next 30 minutes. We're going to move quickly through the market context. You're probably already obviously working in this, so you'll feel what the market's like at the moment. And then we'll talk about what matters now and how you can perform better in this difficult market that we're seeing at the moment. As we've said, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We'll pick them up at the end of the session. Okay. So Ben, as we said, you work with agents every day. Before we talk about the solutions, I think we should outline what's actually changed. So what are you actually seeing on the ground that's different from, say, 18 months ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things to make sure that we grab a hold of here is that the challenges that all of our agents are well aware of still remain. Some of the biggest ones of those, of course, are limited stock, certainly the quality of that stock. One of the big ones is the motivation of our buyers and sellers. In the marketplace at the moment, particularly with the different operating models within agents at the moment, is the incredibly competitive sort of fee-driven marketplace that our agents work in. But I think the main difference at the moment, and one of the point we're having this conversation, is the challenge in terms of the amount of time it takes to get from offer agreed through to exchange and completion. Is putting a huge pressure on our agents, not just on the revenue income, but also the relationships with their buyers and sellers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've used our own data and data from trusted partners to come up and bring forward these numbers to you. We run through 1,500 conveyancing cases a month, so we have a lot of data that we can look through and bring out some of the key numbers, as you can see here on this slide. So again, not all of this will be news to you guys, that transaction times are getting longer, fall throughs are higher, and we're operating, as Ben said, in an incredibly competitive market at the moment. There's nearly 19,000 Propertymark member agents alone, and you're all competing for the same motivated instructions. So many agents are still looking to generate more leads, but we feel that in this market, pipelines are so fragile, volume alone isn't the real answer here. Does that match what you're seeing, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes back to what I was saying a moment ago. We're well accustomed to the challenges of winning instructions in this market at the moment. But the added pressure of the under offer pipeline taking a lot longer to reach exchange it's just causing a huge amount of pressure, as I mentioned, not only on the revenue but also, you know, on the relationships with our buyers and sellers. At the moment, we're finding a lot of our agents are feeling somewhat helpless in trying to speed things along, particularly when it's in the hands of the conveyancers. That along, of course, with so much noise at the moment around politics and economic news, which is causing some vendors and buyers to really consider is now the right time to be doing this. We're also seeing a significant increase in the number of new homes deals in our agents' pipelines. Now, historically, the new homes deals, once adding them in, they were kind of our quick wins. They'd certainly, you know, pre-pack, ready to go, and they'd sail through to exchange. What we're actually seeing over the last 18 months is the figures are showing that these new homes deals are actually now no longer those quick transactions and tend to be more brittle than actually our standard resale sales. So it's really interesting to see what's changed. I think the overarching thing at the moment is that agents need to adapt their operating models, not just wait for the market to change, which it has done historically, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if we have a look at sort of what's changed day to day, the biggest shift isn't just the transaction volume. It's deals that they're just not proceeding to exchange and completion as quickly as they used to. Over many conversations I'm having at the moment, the hidden cost at the moment where agents are really feeling this is the effort per deal cost. They're working harder for less completions. The pipeline looks okay on the surface, but when you actually start digging in, it just isn't moving at the pace that it used to.
Yeah, so it's not just slower; it's less predictable and more effort per deal.
Yeah, 100%. I think it comes down to a real management problem at the moment, because if we can't see where the risk is, we're not acting on it early enough. I think that's the biggest issue. A couple of examples at the moment with agents on the conveyancing side of things with us at the moment. We're well accustomed to chains of sort of 4 or 6 properties where quite often the top really doesn't know or have the visibility of what the lower part of the chain is doing. We're spending so much time up and down that chain trying to get information on timeframes, what lending milestones have been hit, you know, what's left outstanding. And altogether, while we're doing that, we're also trying to manage the expectations of our buyers and sellers. We've all been caught as agents in chains where there's threats of pulling out, you know, coming down to lack of visibility. We've got one agent at the moment, actually, that's worth mentioning, who's only just found out through weeks of chasing up and down the chain that the bottom of the chain have opted for a gifted deposit. That's coming from remortgage funds from parents. Now, this is a week before exchange. They're now faced with having to remarket that property because the vendor's expectations and what they were hoping and expecting for hasn't been met. And it's all, you know, that's coming in a market where it's already causing them doubts whether it's the right time to be selling now. What's the property market doing? Are things going up or down? I mean, those are just a very small few examples of what we're seeing more and more of at the moment. I think it's compounded, of course, by market, what it's doing, and certainly lending costs increasing, and it's just getting to sort of a bottleneck and causing lots of worry and concerns on both sides. I mean, the need that we have this sort of knee-jerk reaction as agents. As soon as that's happening, we're then thinking, right, okay, we've got to get more leads in. We've got to go and, you know, we've got to go and get more properties. We've got to pile some more things into this fragile pipeline. But I don't think necessarily that's you know what we should really be doing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and I think looking at the data, this is where some of the agencies are potentially still misdiagnosing the problem. But as Ben mentioned there, I think as you said, Ben, the instinct is, you know, we need more leads, more valuation, so we spend more on marketing, we need more portal presence. But actually, the real issue is conversion across the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100% of agents already have good levels of sales in their pipeline. That, you know, the fact of it is, it's just not converting for them at the moment.
Yeah. And we think that drive to get more leads is the wrong approach at this stage. It makes more sense if your pipeline is converting poorly. You know, adding more instructions to the top just creates more admin and more potential fall through. So you end up busier but not more successful. And Is this
Yeah.
where you see the biggest breakdowns when you look at agents, stock and pipelines, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the two headline bits for me at the moment certainly is overpriced instructions that sit for months and months on the market with no offers. That's certainly, something again that we're all painfully aware of that needs managing. I think the second at the moment is the offers that go into the pipeline but then stall at progression because no one's proactively marketing, sort of managing that chain. Certainly, I think that's the two main things for me at the moment that we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, we were talking about this, weren't we, previously, that in a fast market, that speed is the speed of the market hides all this. And when the market's changed as it is now, the processes need to be much more effective. And if you don't have those good partnerships, that's really exposed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So again, looking at the data that we hold, as I mentioned, we hold a lot of data in our business. And so we can see there are 3 specific breakdowns in the pipeline. You'll all be aware of this, but it's really worth reiterating and looking at some of the detail here. The first is instructions that aren't generating enough offers. And that might be a pricing issue, a presentation issue, or that the vendor isn't motivated enough. The second is agreed sales that don't complete. This is where the real money is lost, obviously, because an agreed sale that falls through is cost you time, marketing, viewings, admin, and you end up with nothing at the end of it. And the third is just time. Every extra week a deal takes in progression is a week where something can go wrong, and we'll look at that later on in terms of how we help agents with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's sort of hook, line, and sinker, the 3 stages there that that we're really aware of. It also comes back to what we all know, and this is a phrase that a lot of the agents that have been agents for a long time. It's about doing the basics and doing them really well. If we think about current stock management, are we talking to our vendors about what the market's doing at every opportunity? That really is so painfully important at the moment that they're aware of what's coming. It's about putting time aside in the diary to manage the sales pipeline and letting the buyers and sellers know when this is taking place. It gives them opportunity to be part of that conversation and keep them involved at every stage. I think also there's to some extent we create our own market, and we do this by educating from the get-go. If we talk about when the buyers and sellers make first contact with us, we start talking to them about what the market's doing, what the process is, and bring the buyer and seller back into their original motivations when things do get tough. I think that's something that we sort of fall short, and we sort of sometimes get into a bit of a panic mode with the buyers and sellers when things don't go to plan. And it's about having that conversation with them just to bring them back to why they were doing this in the process. What was their original motivation? That still remains in place, certainly. Coming back to your point, we touched on a little bit about fall throughs. I think a lot of issues that crop up in the process aren't visible early enough. By the time we're realizing that sale's at risk, it's often too late to rescue it, and we're almost sort of retrofitting perhaps the work we should have done if we had visibility of it prior to it, really sort of taking shape and being an issue in that pipeline. There's also the efficiencies of working with our proceedable buyers. It comes back to, are we educating them right from the get-go, from the first point of contact, as I said. It's so vitally important to keep them posted and educate them from that get-go of when we get started. The other thing I'd probably touch on as well is are we matching the motivations of our vendors with the motivation of our ready to proceed buyers? That's certainly something that really needs some work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this table we put together really shows what we see out there in the market, isn't it? The old market versus the new market. Yeah. And again, many of the people on this call will recognize these drivers, but the systems, the KPIs, the team habits often are still built for a faster, higher volume market. In that environment, you could afford to be reactive, but not now, because the market has changed, as we've said. So Ben, if you could change one thing in how a typical branch runs tomorrow, what would it be?
Yeah, okay, sort of $1 million question with lots of answers. So it's fine. It's hard to answer it with sort of without taking the floor for the next couple of hours. But I think it comes down probably to what I've already mentioned. And I really think this is sort of first and foremost, which is, it's about making sure we're educating both our vendors and buyers in what to expect right from the first point of contact. What do we need from them? What do they need to be doing in order to get the process off to the right start? We don't want anything to come as a surprise and cause either party to doubt their decision. We know what the process is. We've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times over. But do our clients really know? Are we sharing that with them, or are we leaving it to chance and having to then, again, retrofit that educational piece and conversation, once the doubt was already set in? We're so lucky that we hold so much knowledge, which is why we do what we do in the process. But I hear it just so often that the reasons for sales falling through is because of reasons that could have been avoided if we just set the deal up correctly in the beginning. Managing those expectations, keeping in touch and reassuring throughout every bit of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we talked quite a lot there about, the challenges that are out there. So should we look at what actually this looks like in practice? Cool. So as I said, we've established that the market has changed, and the pipeline conversion problem is the real challenge. So we're going to talk about now what the best agents are doing differently from the experience that we're seeing out there on the ground. Because there are some branches, as you said, Ben, that are performing really well. So what is it that you're seeing, and how are those agents that are performing better, what are they doing differently?
Yeah, I think it comes down to one thing, and honestly, I stand by this, and it's about setting the vendor up for the conveyancing process at point of instruction rather than when an offer is agreed. Similarly with the buyers, as soon as they make first contact with the agency, they're making sure they're having, those qualifying conversations, not just for, financially, as we need to as an agent, but introducing the conveyancing process at that early point. With our vendors, it's about setting them up, speaking to the conveyancer right from the get-go. So, getting some of the preliminary work done ahead of getting the offer in. Actually, the next slide we've got is highlights a few of these bits, and this is really hook, line, and sinker what those agents are doing out there at the moment that are having success. I think it's really key also to mention that the success at the moment isn't necessarily the ones with the biggest marketing budgets. And the ones that are having success are sharing quite a lot of these elements here. We spoke about pricing earlier. The agents that are having success currently, they're honest about pricing from the start, which is harder than it sounds in the current market, where every vendor has a certain value that they're expecting their house to be worth. And when we're valuing things, we're giving comparable evidence. We're having a look at what else is similar on the market. Those comparable properties at the moment range so wildly in price, it's really hard to manage the vendor's expectations with that, comparable stock ranging so wildly. Of course, as well, with the fee-driven sort of competition out there, everyone's going for not always a large pool of stock. But we've got to bear in mind that overpriced stock is one of the biggest pipeline detractors at the moment. And so much work needs to go into that property once it's listed to get it ready to get into the pipeline. One of the bits that's worth talking about here as well is how they treat the sales progression process. So many years in a fast-moving market, that became a bit of a back office sort of admin task. It can't be anymore, certainly with the pipelines taking as long to mature as they are. So those agents are treating it like front office work. Time is set aside daily in the diary, that the buyers and vendors are aware of what that time is, so that they know that it's being chased and they know when they can have that conversation with the agents. That's really key at the moment. I know I'm going to keep going back to it quite a bit in terms of educating our vendors and buyers, but it comes down to that again. The agents that are successful at the moment in the market are keeping that momentum going once the offer is agreed. They're consistently managing the buyer and vendors' expectations and the engagement. They're not doing what we've all been able to get away with in so many years, is waiting for the phone to ring when there's a problem. We're not in that sort of market anymore. It's also really clear to see, and I think this is worth mentioning, that those agents that are having success have got a solid and trusted relationship with their recommended conveyancers. It's why so many of our agents have had those relationships for so many years, because they've got that two-way conversation. They're given the visibility of every step of that deal as well.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely. I think the next slide shows, the areas where we've got that pipeline control and how you can manage your pipeline better, doesn't it? So there's the four pillars here, I suppose. So proceedability is the first one. We've talked about this, but not all pipeline is equal. Knowing which listings has a genuinely motivated, mortgage-ready, proceedable buyer saves enormous time. The second one there is buyer intent. Do you have the information you need about your buyer? If a registered buyer isn't necessarily a committed buyer, so it's going beyond just registration. Looking at which buyers are attending viewings, comparing properties to others. That's the challenge, as Ben just mentioned. But who are your top 10 buyers within your pipeline or within the business that you've got? And then the third is the risk side of things. So spotting those signs early is really important. And again, that partnership between conveyancer and the agent is really important there, because you can see if a buyer's gone quiet, there's a link in the chain that's looking weak. We see regularly, don't we, at the moment? So it's worth far more having that insight than trying to generate another instruction. And the fourth one there is just the pipeline intelligence. Having one clear view of your pipeline really helps, so you can look at your pipeline on a Monday morning, your Monday morning meeting, and show the team what's completing this month, and having that real insight is a real positive. Does that fit with what you're seeing as well, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of agents that have started in sort of more traditionally run agents early back, so many years, and sort of morphing their trading style to fit more in line with with where the market's doing at the moment. I think it's fair to say that most of our agencies will be aware of these four pillar points. However, some will have different agency setups. Some will have sales progressors. Some will rely on the selling negotiated progressor sale. But having a robust system in place that provides visibility for all means that the early signs are picked up and dealt with, and keep that sales pipeline moving. I think that's honestly sort of where it's at the moment.
Yeah, very cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we're helping our customers and how technology is linking up with the people to make sure that we create that visibility and control and not add to your admin burden. So as we said, we have a CRM and a legal business. We're pretty unique in that aspect, and so it gives us that ability to bring the two together and bring data to show where we can improve things for our agents. So we've really focused on giving agents the four things we talked about. So it's that proceedability, buyer intent, the visibility of risk, and pipeline intelligence in one single platform. And Ben, we've got customers using this process and our systems and services. How are you seeing that help the agents that are using it?
Yeah, I think there tends to be a little bit of resistance in terms of any sort of technology into a system that's worked and been so robust for so many years. And I think if I think back to sort of 15, 20 years ago, with the systems that we have now and what is out there, it is a little bit daunting, particularly when we've had sort of such well relied upon sort of manual sort of processes in progressing the sales. And it's worked really well, don't get me wrong, it really has. I think that the technology side of things and what that provides in that sort of more visibility and certainly clearer visibility on what's happening, rather than just relying on sort of making often tens of phone calls to rely on getting those updates. Technology can gap, sort of bridge the gap in between that sort of manual process and provide the visibility of that, really, really well, certainly.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm too far. I'm sorry, too far. Sorry, carry on, Ben.
No, that's all right. I think it's worth saying that most of the systems agents use are pretty reactive, and I've used my fair share of them over the years. And what I mean by that, they're not proactively showing sort of what needs to be done and what needs to be actioned right now. They're great at showing what's happened. They're just not very good at telling us what's going to happen next and what needs to be done in preparation. That's the key thing here, where I think we're seeing the change. There's still too much time, absolutely still too much time spent sort of manually pulling data into systems, chasing, system status updates and bits and pieces, and building pipeline reports in spreadsheets. If you look at the amount of time that's spent doing that, we need to be going back again to what I've been saying, having those guiding educational conversations with the buyers and vendors that are sat in that pipeline, sort of having a bit of a worry that, are they doing the right thing? That's time that we need spent with them, certainly.
Yeah. And we're really trying to help, aren't we, by improving and ensuring that technology helps in the right places. And that's been through focusing on improving the agent conveyancer relationship, and giving, as we said, the agents the visibility and control over the whole pipeline. I don't want to labour this point again, but we're a technology and conveyancing company, so we're actually really leading the way on how AI can help speed up the pipeline, whilst also enhancing customer service. Some of the things we can do now are incredible. So in the background, how we can provide updates to customers really regularly, very simply, and just giving that great customer service is really, really helping. But again, we know ultimately that this is still a people business, and our conveyancers really become part of your team when delivering those real-time updates, and that's really, really key to that relationship piece. And we know, as we spoke about earlier, Ben, that a lot of our customers are using our market-ready product, so that gives the ability to have a mobile-friendly tool and automations that really remove that headache from the compliance piece. So, we can take all of that away from agents with just a one-click solution, really, and that really gives, again, that full helps manage the pipeline and gives that full view of it. That's really making a difference, would you say, Ben, to the agents that you've seen using this?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing here as well is it's not about having more data, it's about making better decisions. If we collate that per face-to-face, apologies if you can hear my dog barking in the background, the joys of working remotely. So if you can hear that's it barking wildly in the background. Coming back to what I was saying, I think
some attention.
Yeah, absolutely. He's cheering us on in the sidelines. I think it's about better decisions. If we know what deals are at risk early, we can intervene. When we know which buyers are genuinely engaged, it's about, right, we need to make a call to that person. That essentially is what's moving the needle, and it's about combining that, a people-centric business, the face-to-face element of that, with clever technology that doesn't suffocate the process but provides the right visibility and updates. That's certainly, I think is where we're seeing the success with our agents anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if there's one thing that you hopefully will take away from today, is that in this market, success is not always about generating more opportunities. It's about converting the ones you already have. And as we've said many times, the agents who are winning out there right now know what's proceedable. They know which deals are at risk. They're managing buyer engagement proactively, and they have the tools and the conveyancer partnership to do all of that. So Ben, again, I'm going to give you that $1 million question again, but if you're running a branch on Monday, what's the one thing you'd change?
Okay. I think it's going to come back. I'm sounding, like a record on repeat, but it comes down to making sure the team were having the right conversations about what to expect in the buying and selling process, prepping both sides for every eventuality in the current market, and of course making sure that the teams had visibility on the right information throughout the process, so they could actively do that, and educated conversations at the point that need to be had. I want them to be able to influence and drive the pipeline through to completion, and essentially, as running a business, that's where the money sits, essentially.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Ben. So we're happy to show anyone on the call, how we're helping agencies do exactly that. So if it's useful to you, then you can book a demo with us. Just go to dezrez.com, book a demo, and we can walk you through our solution. We'd be happy to do that. So thank you, everyone. If there's any questions in the chat, we can take those now, and I can stop sharing my screen.
Perfect. thank you, guys. No, you don't have any questions, which means you must have answered them all already. So that's brilliant. So thank you, Richard and Ben, for the webinar today. It's been really great. And I just wanted to say, if anybody does have any questions that they want to pass over to Rich and Ben, please do email them over to us at events@propertymark.co.uk, and we can get those passed on to the guys. So thank you to everybody that has joined us, and thank you both for speaking today. And we will see you all very soon.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Have
you,
a great day,
everyone.
everyone. Cheers. Bye.